After the incident at the freshman welcome party, we come to the next day, where at the academy, the Ice and Fire Corps attend classes together. Through this method, a competitive structure is created for the confident elites. This increases focus among students and it is the academy's policy. The man who looks like Professor Snape from Harry Potter closes the book in his hand, which marks the end of his lecture on the culture of the barbarian tribe. This Snape wannabe is the combat theory professor known as Vinci Morgue, from the Morgue family. As he continues to talk to the students, he asks them a question, which causes most of them to avoid eye contact with him in order not to catch his attention. The professor states that with the basis of the discovered locations of the barbarian tribe, he wanted to ask if there was anyone in the classroom who would like to tell him about the barbarians' hypothesized location of their stronghold. Even Tudor, who belonged to the Ice Corps and was ranked first in the practical exam, had some trouble with the professor's question. He looks through his notes, thinking about the location of the clash between the barbarians and the Empire, which was at the South Region's front in Highland, 1, 8 and 75. But there were more places that he struggles to remember. Bianca, who is also a part of the Ice Corps and tied with Tudor in placing first in the practical exam, struggles with the question. Thinking about it deeply, she knew that the areas where the Empire and the Baloch tribe clashed were all in low-altitude locations, and considering that it was a trough, she concluded that the barbarians' tribe's stronghold would be in a region with low altitude as well. But as the two people who ranked first in the practical exam struggle to come up with an answer, Sinclair bursts in, raising her hand high in the air while radiating a bright aura all around her, catching everyone's attention as she screams at the top of her lungs that she was going to answer. Sinclair belongs to the Fire Corps, is currently ranked first in their practical exam, and ranked second in the theory exam. Looking at the student who happily raised her hand to answer, Professor Vinci concluded that she was Sinclair, ranked first of the Fire Corps, and told her to go ahead and reveal her answer to everyone in class. Sinclair spoke about how in the military, according to the published academia, the location of the close fight between the barbarian tribe and the Empire were in Highlands 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 30, 75, and 207. She also spoke about how excluding the 8th Highland, which is on a high mountain peak, all of the areas were in troughs. With all that information, as she continued on with her answer, Vikir was spotted, sitting one row behind her. But his eyes were closed as PG stared at him. Instead of sleeping, Vikir was deep in thought. Going through his mind were the events of last night. Yesterday marked the 29 times he had slain demon worshippers in the city. Something they had in common was that they all possessed a severe stench of demons, and before they died, their so-called faces exploded into a bloody mess each time. Face and explode. With these two facts, Vikir thought that if that was the skill of the elite corpse that was hiding in this capital city, then there was only place he could think of that it would be hiding itself in. He concluded that he needed to ask Cindy for her help in investigating the area around the place he had in mind, but as he was thinking, PG immediately calls out to Vikir, tapping onto his shoulder in order to grab his attention. Upon opening his eyes, our boy could see that everyone in the class had their eyes focused on him. Professor Snape was furious, stating that the Ice Corps weren't as good as the Fire Corps, as he couldn't believe that there was a student who would dare sleep in the first class of the semester. Flexing his glasses, Vikir responds back to the professor, telling him that he wasn't sleeping. His reply shocked PG. Upset over our boy's arrogant reply, the professor grew even more furious, asking Vikir to reveal his name to him. After knowing his name, the professor stated that everyone in the class saw that his eyes were closed. But our boy was quick with his reply, telling the professor that his eyes were closed, but it didn't mean that he was sleeping. Hearing that kind of reply, the professor eats a humble pie and tells Vikir that he was mistaken. Our boy said it was understandable, making the professor even more furious as he wondered what kind of psycho had entered the academy this time. Failing to break Vikir over his responses, the professor decides to move on. He tells the class that because of the answer that Fire Corps rank 1, Sinclair gave, the Fire Corps have gained 1 point out of 10 for behavior points. The professor then suggested something to Vikir, telling him that if he could answer his question, he was going to give him and the Ice Corps the points. However, the professor warns Vikir that if he answers the question wrongly, he was going to give the entire Ice Corps students negative points instead. Our boy simply shouted back that his suggestion was unfair, but the professor didn't care anymore and presented the question. He wanted to know the location of the Empire's military and where the Baloch fought. With that location, he wanted Vikir to tell him where the Baloch tribe's stronghold is. Sinclair was stunned by the professor's sudden question. She knew that compared to other tribes, information on the Balochs was hard to come by, making the question extremely difficult. Bianca, on the other hand, was pissed off at Vikir's arrogant attitude towards the professor, calling him an idiot in his mind, as she believes that everyone in the Ice Corps was going to be at a loss because he couldn't answer the question. Taking the question in mind, Vikir thought about for a while, a memory of the Balak tribe, dancing around a campfire while smiling and having meat in their hands came into his mind. He remembers his barbarian family along with the precious memories he had made with them. Just the thought of them makes our boy smile. And so, he calmly answers back to the professor, revealing the location of the fight between the Balaks and the Empire. He spams everyone with accurate information and a strong possible location of the Balak's stronghold. His answer was enough to stun everyone who heard it in the classroom. After ending his answer, Vikir knew that after the Alman incident, the Balaks had actually shifted their stronghold, so telling the class about their old place was no big deal. But his answer was still considered incredible, as PG was left stunned with his mouth wide open upon hearing it. Even Professor Snape was impressed by Vikir's answer as it was exactly spot on. He wonders how it was possible for our boy to know about the thesis that hasn't been verified by the academic world. But as he continues to think about Vikir's answer, the professor soon recalls that a student with the same name had recently placed first in the theory exam. And so, the professor decides to give Vikir 10 points for his answer, while giving the rest of the Ice Corps 1 point each. But after finding out that Vikir had placed first in the theory exam, he decides to humble him by not overlooking the fact that he had closed his eyes during his lesson. So the professor decides to minus 10 points from Vikir. Sinclair was looking at our boy. In her mind, she didn't even notice him because of how common the name Vikir was. Even in his nerd disguise, our boy couldn't hide his aura as she continued to gaze at him, while he stood tall, basking in the rays of the sun. Even Tudor was drawn to Vikir as he continues to stare at him from across the classroom. The other students were talking amongst themselves, realizing that Vikir was the one who placed first in the theory exam, but some didn't care, as all of them almost had a negative score in points. They seemed to believe that Vikir was only a nerd, which makes them want to go and punch him in the face. Looking at our boy, Tudor couldn't help but smirk, after finding the smartest person when it comes to theory. But he wonders how useful that would be during the practical lessons. We now change scenes to a large football-like field, where the students were playing a game called Run Flat, which uses a special type of ball and gloves. It's a sport with 20 people on each team. Points are acquired when the ball is in the other team's goal area. It's against the rules to use mana and weapons. Besides that, it is a game where any method can be used to score goals. The match starts off with a player stomping the ground hard. It turns out to be Tudor, who smashes through the defense line of the opposite team with ease. As he carries the ball to score, he declares to everyone that he was the best when it comes to run flat, and that this was his time to shine. The girls in the stand cheered him on, commenting about how hot he was while Bianca was annoyed, calling the sport barbaric. As Tudor reaches closer to the goal of the enemy team, a familiar three-headed group appears to block his way. It turns out to be the triplets from the Baskerville family. They stand against Tudor together, calling him an arrogant bastard and daring him to try and break through them. Instead of being afraid of the rumored Ironblood swordsman family's troublemaker triplets, Tudor was excited. Much to the triplets' surprise, he didn't face them head-on. Instead, he weaved past two of them easily, leaving them shocked. But before reaching the end, the last triplet makes his appearance, telling Tudor to hand over the ball. Instead of answering back, Tudor simply prepares his left hand and within a second, a bright blue light appears from it. Wasting no time at all, he slams his fist into the triplet's body, causing what looks like a Rasengan attack to appear on his stomach, knocking him out of his way completely. He tells the triplets that if he had decided to face them head-on, then he was going to lose it all. With only one person alive on the enemy team, Tudor makes a mad dash to the goalpost. After witnessing the powerful move he did, the other students were amazed by him as they could see how strong he was even without any mana or weapons. They had also heard rumors that he was Don Quixote's run-flat prodigy, which was expected of the Ice Corps ace. Running to the goal, Tudor was thinking to himself that there was no point in memorizing theories. As a true fighter, all he needed was the strength to win. But as he continues to run, he notices something in front of him. It turns out to be our boy Vikir, who was the only member on his team left standing in the way of Tudor. Tudor recognizes Vikir as the student who responded back to Professor Snape in this morning's lecture. Our boy was actually annoyed by what was happening right now. He had told the triplets not to send Tudor on his way, and decided to step aside to let him score. But there's a twist. Instead of aiming for the goalpost, Tudor actually decides to mess with Vikir. Thinking that with this body slam, he was going to help Vikir focus more on training his body than studying. Unfazed by what was happening, Vikir showed no reaction at all to Tutor's sudden attack. Instead, he simply stood still, resulting in Tutor falling through the air after he crashed into Vikir. Like a car hitting a wall. It turns out that the impact from crashing into Vikir was enough to knock him out. His face was completely blurred, showing no signs of life. Even Bianca and Sinclair couldn't believe what was going on as they witnessed this sight from the stands. Vikir turns his head to look behind, only to see Tutor finally landing onto the ground with a heavy slam. Thinking about what had just happened, Vikir initially planned on dodging Tutor, but instead, he questions why this blonde kid would just run into him first. Before he could make sense of things, our boy simply fell to the ground as well, moaning loudly in pain because in his mind, he was going to pretend to be injured. The sleeping blonde prince laid on the field completely flat on his back after the incident with Vikir, his face covered in sweat. Moments later, his eyes suddenly opened wide. Tutor was surrounded by his fellow students, as he continued to lay on the ground, confused by what had happened to him. The voices of his classmates asking him if he was okay didn't even register with him, as he wondered what he was doing right now, whether he had fainted or actually fallen asleep during the match. He started to remember what he was doing before seeing the scene in front of him. Tutor had decided during the match to mess with Vikir, who ranked first in theory, for a bit. He was going to tease him by barging into his shoulder a little, but the moment they made contact, everything went black for him, so he couldn't remember exactly what happened. As he sat up, Tutor looked at Vikir, who was dusting off his body. He couldn't believe that a nerd like him could actually knock out the great Tutor Don Quixote. Seeing that there wasn't even a single scratch on our boy, Tutor was determined to test out what happened just now again. Once more, the game was about to begin with everyone getting into their positions at the start of the match. The ball was once again passed over to Tutor, who was thinking that something was wrong with the incident against Vikir, and so, he wanted to do it again to test his own theory. This time, the triplets of the Baskerville family immediately stood on guard against Tutor, while also acting like a shield for Vikir, who simply stood at the back of the field. But as soon as the match started, Bianca and Sinclair, who were watching from the stands, were confused by what was going on. Instead of going for the goal post, Tutor was aiming right for the triplets and Vikir, ignoring the words from his teammates as he charged towards them instead. Tutor confidently challenges the triplets and Vikir once more, which the triplets happily accept, replying to Tutor that he wasn't going to get past them this time round. Once again, the triplets failed at blocking and intercepting Tutor, who held the ball and got past them easily a second time. His eyes were completely focused on Vikir this round, charging towards our boy at full speed. Vikir watches closely as the blonde kid continues to run in his direction. He thinks about how he had ordered the triplets to keep Tutor away from him, but at the same time, he wonders why Tutor was so serious about coming towards him now. The genius spearman was revved up, his eyes were locked onto our boy, no longer seeing him as human but a target now. Tutor was serious, he knew that what happened to him was no mere coincidence. So he decides to use the Azure Spearman family's run-flat secret technique, Saint Spear Tackle. Yes, this powerful family actually created a killer move for a ball game. An avatar of a knight with a powerful lance was summoned behind Tutor as his eyes turned completely blue, determined to smash into Vikir and send him flying in the air this time. Even though such a powerful force was coming straight to his face, Vikir was actually pretty calm, pretty demure. His glasses were showing no signs of fear at all. Soon enough, we cut to black once again. In the next moment, the same gray-hair scarred-faced student appears above Tutor, asking him if he was awake again. The blonde prince once again wakes up in his usual T-pose, completely wasted on the ground again. He immediately sat upright, questioning how it was possible for him to faint once more, but as he struggles to understand what was happening, the muscular guy beside him tells him to calm down. He reveals to Tutor that after he used his family's technique, which was hitting Vikir with a high-speed tackle, it simply resulted in him being bounced off our boy at that same high speed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our next challenger. As the student who woke up Tutor tightens the headband on his head, he tells Tutor that he understands why he was so focused on Vikir, as our boy was clearly hiding something from them. This time, Sancho, the muscular student, was going to go against our boy. With the sun shining brightly on him, he heads over to the match. Telling Tutor that as a man and a friend, he couldn't just watch and do nothing after seeing him get beaten twice by Vikir. This is the transfer student who came from the Mercenary Guild Association in the north, Sancho Barataria. Due to his overwhelming physique, he is not considered eligible for his age group in his league, so he decided not to play run flat. Basically, this guy was too overpowered to play a ball game. But because of Vikir, he changes his mind. As he held onto the ball, Sancho talked about how in the frozen land of the north, newborns of the elderly who are on the verge of death fight desperately. It means they're all warriors. It's round 3 for the triplets this time as they faced off against the giant. Determined and hyper-focused, the triplets weren't letting anyone pass them this round. Third time's the charm, right? Well, not in this world, because in the next second, instead of dodging and weaving past the triplets like Tudor did twice, Sancho just decides to do the wrestling move and clothesline all 3 of the hounds together. Sancho easily slams and flings the triplets into the air, pushing and making them fly away from Vikir, who simply stood his ground. As they flew past their master, our boy was pissed off this time. His eyes were glowing red behind his glasses, whispering to the triplets if they wanted to die. The triplets could only cry as they flew past their master once again, apologizing for their 3rd failure in a row while in the air. Even after sending 3 people in the air, Sancho wasn't stopping his attack. He charges straight at Vikir like a bull. His face was filled with determination, just like how Tudor was from before, in order to reveal what Vikir was hiding from them. Our boy, on the other hand, was still emotionless even before a giant that was rampaging towards him. Just inches away from him this time, Sancho readies himself, telling Vikir that he was going to see if he could endure his full power this time. With his hand raised up high in the air, Sancho lands a full blow onto Vikir's stomach with all his might, causing a loud bang. But the moment he got into contact with our boy, all he could feel and sense was that he was hitting a huge mountain of stone. The feeling in his arm was shocking to Sancho, who was known for his powerful strength. His hand was shaking as he tried to move Vikir by a little bit. Even after being hit by Sancho's full strength, Vikir didn't feel anything at all. Instead, he was thinking that he should play along with what Sancho wanted. So he purposely jumped backwards with a bit of strength, pretending that Sancho's attack had actually done something to him. In order to make sure it was right, Vikir created skid marks on the field with his body, even crashing into the ground like the triplets did. The other students who were watching were amazed by what they witnessed. They couldn't believe that Sancho had broken through the enemy team's defense. But some of them wondered if the guy he pushed was still alive. Unknown to the other students, Sancho, completely aware of what was really going on, couldn't help but stare at his shaking hand, wondering what that feeling was he just experienced and if Vikir was actually human. Distracted by the weird sensation that Vikir gave off, Sancho was unaware that one of the triplets had recovered from his attack and sneaked up to him. Within seconds, the triplet had stolen the ball from him and made a mad dash towards the goal. Before long, the referee blows the whistle, announcing the end of the game. It turns out that thanks to the triplets, Vikir's team had won the match. As the team continued to congratulate the triplets on their sneaky win tactic, Vikir finally got off the ground and started to dust himself off. But then someone pours a bottle of water onto his head. It turns out to be Sancho, who praises Vikir as he knew that he was the secret contributor to Class B's victory. Even Tudor was impressed by our boy, who retired because of their win. He reveals that he had initially planned on teaching Vikir a lesson during the practical lessons because he was jealous, but then came to a realization of how shameful that was, and apologies to our boy for his rude actions from before. Sancho was even more interested in Vikir, asking him about what exercises he did in order to have such a solid build. He even thought that Vikir had used mana during the match. Taking off his headgear, Vikir reveals that he was just a commoner, and didn't have an ounce of mana to use. Tudor was sad to hear that, calling it a shame. If he had received proper training, combined with his current blessed body, then he was sure that Vikir would have been an expert like him. As the 3 of them chat, Tudor's cheerleading squad arrives, calling out to them to use the towel they brought to wipe their sweat. Once again, the ladies' man was doing his business while Sancho hands Vikir a towel to use. The Azure Spearman family's hero, Tudor, and the mercenary guild's ace, Sancho. One day, they will become heroes who will save mankind by hunting an endless number of demons during the time of the fall. As he took off his glasses, Vikir couldn't help but smile to himself. After all, he found it strange to see that these 2 gentlemen had a past like this. The moment he reveals his face, everyone around, from guys to girls, were all stunned by what they were looking at. Even Bianca and Sinclair were blushing hard, while watching from the stands. As our boy wipes the water from his head, basking in the rays of the sun. His toned body etched into his stretch, revealing the fine lines and curves. Everyone couldn't believe how handsome the nerd they knew was underneath the glasses he wore. Unknown to Vikir, he didn't know that from this point onwards, his days at the academy were going to become more troublesome. The scene changes to nighttime, where we chance upon a mansion. A man with a purple goatee was horrified by something, as Vikir's voice could be heard. revealing that this man is Lloyd Dokeseller, 52 years old. Wearing his Assassin Creed uniform, you guys know that it means it was demon hunting time. Multiple dead bodies surrounded the two of them, with the floor covered in blood as pieces of meat were flung everywhere. Vikir cornered the man to a statue, revealed as the leader of the information house and the headmaster of the orphanage. Vikir knew that Lloyd had conspired with the demon he was hunting, and sold children from high-ranked families. "Did you think you would go unnoticed?" questioned Vikir as he threatens him with Beelzebub. Lloyd was horrified to see the kind of aura that Vikir was showing off. Due to its solid nature, Lloyd thought that Vikir was a swordmaster. Hearing that, the man was almost right. Vikir's aura was pretty much in a solid state, but is still closer to liquid. To be specific, he was currently at the highest level for a graduator. Instead of slicing him into bits, Vikir offers the man a chance at redemption, telling him to work with him in order to catch the demon, and if he does, Vikir was willing to compensate him accordingly. Even at death's door, Lloyd hesitates to help. As Vikir waited for a reply from the man, something happened. A huge piece of a building was flung in the air right above them. It soon crashes and destroys the very place they were at. Vikir was quick to dodge the impact of the building, and immediately looked up to see a shadowy figure, lighted by the moonlight, standing on the remains of the building that was thrown at them. A nasty green aura started to float around our boy. It turns out that this was the overwhelming energy that he had sensed from afar. Looking at the strange figure who wore a mask, while wielding a hammer made out of human faces, Vikir questions him, "Are you the elite corpse?"
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.